Mal auf Brücke!
Jawohl!
Alarm!
A crash dive. This was an important maneuver during World War II, when submarines spent most of their time on the surface to run their engines, navigate, and hunt the enemy. Just as in the movies, a World War II-era diesel submarine could completely submerge in as little as 30 seconds. On a German U-boat, a crash dive would often be signaled by the captain, or any lookout, by giving the order, alarm. An alarm bell would then signal, so it would begin a carefully orchestrated process that was frequently practiced. A crash dive could be life or death for a crew if they were being fired on by a surface vessel or aircraft. Diving was the best defense against more heavily armed ships. Once the lookouts were below deck and the upper deck hatch was secured, the chief engineer or captain gave the order fluten. The bow planes would pitch to a maximum down angle, and the crew flooded the forward ballast tanks to increase the weight at the front of the boat, causing a steep dive. The crew might even form a trim party, with men running to the bow to add their collective weight to the dive. These drills were timed and could be hazardous, just as shown in the film Das Boot. Any dive, of course, is far more complicated than just flooding and shifting weight around. The chief engineer had much to coordinate. Hatches and air induction vents had to be closed before falling below the waterline. Most importantly, the diesel engines must be stopped, which, if denied air from the surface, can suck the crew's air right out of a submarine's hull. Electric motors take over as a submarine submerges. A typical U-boat has enough battery power for about 8 hours of operations underwater. During a crash dive, battery power can go fast. The engines are running at full battery speed, so the U-boat can escape its last known location above the waterline, before it's depth charged. A U-boat in a crash dive might attempt, at maximum power, to make it to a depth over 90 meters or 300 feet. Most U-boats weren't at risk of being crushed until reaching a depth of around 700 feet.
Zerquetscht.
U-boats were extremely vulnerable compared to modern submarines. They spent most of their time on the surface. This included using their deck guns against smaller vessels, which was more common earlier in the war, before air escort intensified. Most U-boats carried only around 12 torpedoes, so these had to be used wisely. Some U-boats were equipped with a device called a snorkel during World War II, which allowed a U-boat to operate submerged, but it was problematic and unreliable. The U-boat had to run slowly as not to damage it. Interruptions in air supply could also lead to air being drawn from within the submarine, which could be disastrous for the crew. Snorkels, just like periscopes, could be detected by enemy vessels, particularly while the ship was moving, creating a periscope feather, the wave created by the device moving through the water. Radar during World War II was also able to detect snorkels and periscopes. Furthermore, a U-boat could not use its hydrophone or listening devices while running the diesel engines submerged. Ultimately, U-boats spent the majority of their time on the surface and relied on their ability to quickly dive to survive. Today, there is less need for a submarine to have a speedy dive. A quick dive is just as likely to be used to avoid a collision than to escape combat. Modern nuclear submarines can technically stay submerged for months, only limited by food on board. They can even make their own oxygen. Modern submarines still come near to the surface to use periscopes and communication equipment, but their antennae and periscopes are much longer, up to 28 meters. There are also cable options for sending buoys to the surface to communicate, with even drone options now being made available to submarines. Since 1960, submarines further have not needed to surface to launch missiles, as they can be launched using compressed air or gas steam ejection from under the water, then fire their rocket motors once above the surface. Alright, I'm Johnny. Thanks for watching. I hope you weren't too alarmed by the video. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Take care and have a nice day.